Alderman Connors.
Here.
Alderwoman Barbosa. Alderman McNamara.
Here.
Alderman Santiago. Alderman Simpson.
Present.
Alderman Gibson. Alderman Pabon. Alderman Smedley. Alderwoman Saavedra.
Here. For the record, Alderman Russell sitting in for Alderman Smedley as the alternate.
Thank you. Nine members are present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Also, just a point of order, Alderwoman Scott is present as well tonight. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, will you please read into the record the notice of
Mr.
public
Chair.
hearing?
Make a motion to waive the reading of the legal notice.
I have a motion to waive made by Alderman Santiago, seconded by Alderman Simpson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Reading is waived. Having been noticed properly, we'll begin the public hearing. Please remember to state your name and address for the record and limit your speaking time to 3 minutes. The items for public hearing are 36619, the Neighborhood Flood Relief Initiative for Owner-Occupied Properties, and 36623, the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan Update for 2024. Are there any speakers on these items? Please approach and give your name and address and limit your time to 3 minutes, please.
Face with like a wave, right next to the mic.
Good evening, Andrew Pope, 87 Brighton Street. You guys know me, I've been here many times with Frank Chase. So I just wanted to come and kind of talk about some of the expenses so you guys could use that as reference for some of the numbers that I'm seeing on these resolutions. When I had my flooding, where the sewer backed up into my house on Brighton Street, I had Atlantic Restoration come out and visit my site. And they said because it was a Cat 3, which means there's sewer water in my basement, that the cleaning fee was $10,000 by itself. I don't know if this other program existed then, but I assume they're going to charge you guys even more because you're the city and government and you guys always pay more. So that was just cleaning up the sewer water out of my basement. The second part of that was to replace my finished basement is going to cost me $15,000. That's not $7,500. And to rent the equipment to throw out all the sheetrock in my basement cost me another $2,000. I know this is a lot, seems like a lot of money, but the program seems like $7,500 is a lot of money, but I don't really think it will fix a modern day house in any way, shape, or form. When I have a contractor come to my house to fix little things, it costs me $1,000 nowadays. So yes, this is a good step forward, but we got to be a little more realistic, or just fix the problem. But that's Frank's bit. So, I think that's all I have. I just want to make you guys violently aware that $7,500 is not a lot of money, and regardless of how much you make or don't make, it's not a lot of money to fix a basement. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And I'm sure somewhere Frank's antenna went up, knowing you were talking about that. Any other speakers for the items? Any other speakers for these items? Any other speakers for these items? Seeing no other speakers, we will close public hearing and move on to the regular meeting. The time is now 6:34 p.m. And the first item on the agenda is 36619, the Neighborhood Flood Relief Initiative for Owner-Occupied Properties. May I have a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Santiago.
I make a motion to accept and refer to the full council with a favorable recommendation, item number 36619.
Motion with a favorable recommendation. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Simpson. And is there any discussion? Alderwoman Valente Saavedra.
I wasn't sure if Alderman McNamara was going to make a presentation or if we were going to call up Mark Moriarty and just start asking questions about it. Since John is really the maker of this, how would you or John like to proceed?
Alderman McNamara.
Thank you, Alderman. Yeah, I would just like to review the resolution as it's been submitted. And then it would be most helpful for Mark Moriarty to come up and talk about existing efforts and what would be the requirements of, he thinks, of doing something like it. So,
Mark, do you mind coming up?
well, actually,
Oh, sorry.
per the Alderman's suggestion, again, this is a program that started in Hartford some years ago, I think about 4 or 5, 6 years ago, in response to major storms, not ongoing storms, in the city's north end. And it is based on that and other programs in New York State, in Illinois, that have these funds established to deal with stormwater, sewage issues that homeowners encounter. And we don't have to recite chapter and verse the 10 or a dozen floods that have occurred since the summer of '23, and the expectation by city officials that climate change will bring more of this stuff over the years. Also, we know that the flush program that's ongoing and established, as well as these capital improvement projects that have been identified, and to some extent funding is being addressed at Overlook, this issue is going to be with the city for 10 to 15 years before all those capital needs can even close to being met, because we have a struggle getting the state and federal external support for it, which we need. So this is meant as to create a fund to aid homeowners for various items and things. I know Mr. Pope, who's only been a homeowner here 3 to 4 years and purchased the home without knowing this was an issue, has been hammered by costs over and above that $7,500 level. But this is meant to provide homeowners with cleanings, sump pumps, French drains, lateral replacements, small steps that may prevent, when excessive rains occur, that may prevent the property damage that then will lead to claims against the city and other things. And I see this as a complementary program to what the administration and Corporation Council started discussing over the summer in terms of the rapid response courtesy program that is now in Stamford and West Haven, I believe, where a contractor has been identified to go in and assess at the time Niagara Falls is happening in your basement, at the time of the storm, it's my understanding, having talked to Mr. Comitis at the Water Department about it. So I think this is a complementary program to maybe head off problems before they occur. And I think you've all seen it. I am getting some program review information from the City of Hartford. I'd hope to have it tonight, but I'll send it to all members in terms of the data on it, what works with it, what's worked with it. And as it turns out, their starter program has led to a major investment of federal funds to deal with these issues on an ongoing basis. Hartford is slightly different than than New Britain. It has something called the MDC, which has considerable assets, and I know the MDC is very much involved in properties in that city and in their member towns, much more than we have from Mattabesset, which doesn't have $1 billion, it's my understanding, to invest in clean water. I think that's what they have. But this was a city program started on a pilot basis that led to significant funds from outside sources. I think it's a pilot we need to try in the case of the increased cases that are coming before the Claims Committee. Attorney Prikorsky was helpful enough to give data on it that in the previous 4 or 5 years, flooding cases came up 4, 5, 6 times. And last year, with cases still ongoing, there were 26 cases and claims are going out. So that's just a brief overview, but I'd like to hear, get Mark's knowledge in terms of what's being done now, maybe talk about the rapid response program, if you could. I think, to me, it complements what this proposal is. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark.
I think I'm probably mostly just qualified to talk about the rapid response program. I don't really know much about this other program that Hartford's doing, and it seems like it's a lot of work on private property. And I mean, we typically are handling the infrastructure in the road, but I just don't know much about that program at this point. The rapid response, I think, was a really nice addition to our ability to respond to an issue. If our guys get called in for a sewer complaint or a flooding complaint, they have the ability, if not, we don't necessarily have to determine it's our fault. If we think it could be our fault, that our guy has the ability to call Service Master and schedule immediate repairs. So, I mean, cleaning, so especially with the sewer problems, they'll have somebody go into the house and take care of all of those like very difficult issues. They will, I think, take some photos of just getting a handle initially. Sometimes we have problems where we don't have a good handle on the immediate problems that happen, so that'll be very helpful also. But really, the whole point of it is just to be able to go in there when there is that tough like health issue, to just go in there and immediately do a big cleaning. And like the other gentleman was talking about, it's very expensive, and it's, you know, something you shouldn't be doing as a private property owner.
Thank you, Director Moriarty.
Does anyone want to jump-
Alderwoman Boylan Saavedra,
Thanks.
jump the
Okay.
gun.
I have several questions. I'm going to put them out. So, and then it's going to go to you. It's going to go to John Perugini, and it's going to go to Mary Pokorski. So if y'all just listen to the question, because there's three things that I'm trying to wrap my head around, how they overlap, either complementing or duplicate each other. That is the Claims Committee and how this proposal, funding a homeowner at $7,500 impacts their ability to file a claim and receive money on a claim when this money will have already been allocated or used. So that's one question. The other question is about the difference between having this program and folks going through an application process that takes time after the fact versus the rapid response. So I guess I'm trying to look for a contrast and comparison between the rapid response that's in play and this proposal that's on the table, and how all of that affects the homeowner's ability to file a claim, and is the city paying twice to the homeowner on something relative to the damage done by the water and sewer issue.
So with respect to the rapid response, like as Mark indicated, if there's an issue and our folks are called out there and they deem that the city was at fault, if it's a sewer backup, so if there was a backup in the sewer main, then they're going to contact Service Master, and they're also going to contact my office. So Service Master is going to go into that property, and they're going to clean the property and also take an inventory of any personal property that's in the location, photographs, and they're going to submit that to PMA, who's the city's third-party administrator for claims. And then if it was a finished basement and if there is any damage to the structure, then there's another company that we use that's called EDP that's also going to be called in to determine what the damage is to the structure. So in those cases, Service Master's bill is going to be paid by PMA as part of sort of a claim process. But the homeowner still has the ability, if they had personal property that was damaged, to file a claim for the personal property that was in the basement. But they're not going to file a claim for the Service Master bill because that would already have been paid by PMA. And as far as the restoration, if there needs to be restoration, we're gonna have an estimate from an adjuster, EDP, like I mentioned, that went in there. And so the claim would most likely involve that amount as well.
Thank you, yes.
And all of that is determined by the water person that responds, or that's determined by Service Master?
That's determined by water. So they go out. So if everyone has a lateral, a sewer lateral into their property. If the lateral was backed up and it has nothing to do with the sewer main, then that's not the city's issue. So that's, in my understanding, we're not gonna be calling Service Master in those situations. But if the city main backed up into that property, then the water individual would have the opportunity to call. They would have contact directly into Service Master, and then Service Master would be able to come out to the property to mitigate the damages. So they would be able to come in immediately and clean up. So in circumstances now, a lot of times homeowners, when they have a sewer backup, they don't know who to call. It takes a little bit of time for them to contact someone because they don't know what to do. So we're thinking that this is going to be a quicker process. We're going to be able to mitigate some of the damages by getting Service Master in there quickly, and that's the thought behind the program.
And one last question through you, Mr. Chair, also to Attorney Prokhorsky.
Please,
How
Beth.
is this being funded?
It would be funded through, and Jonathan would know more, but it's going to be part of like PMA, because they handle our claims, it's going to be part of damages claims. So typically in the past, when we didn't have this program, what the homeowner would do would call for cleanup. They would arrange for cleanup of their property, which would be whatever the cost is. If they called another, ServPro is a company that I remember a lot of people using. If that bill was $7,000, then they would file a claim for the $7,000. They would file a claim for the damage to any personal property, and they would file a claim for the, if it was a finished basement, they would file a claim for the rebuilding of that basement area. So in this situation, Service Master is going to be paid by PMA as part of what we anticipate will be a claim that's going to be filed by that homeowner.
Okay, so it's through the fund, from a budgetary perspective, it's being funded through the same source of money that goes through the claims committee?
That's my understanding. John would be able to answer that more directly.
Do you mind if I move your stuff? Okay, thank you. I think you're talking about two different pieces. Are you asking about how we're going to fund this program versus the current one with like the damage claims?
First, I want to ask you about the one that exists right now with
Okay.
Service Master and the ability, so if the water people say, yes, it's our fault, and Service Master is called and does work, how is the city paying that bill? Through what fund?
If it pertains to water, there's a damage claims line item that gets budgeted. I believe sewer also has a small piece as well, based on prior years or budgets or historic trends. So with the damage claims, they usually put a small amount for it based on prior claims against the city.
Okay, and I wanted to stay on this, and I did say one last question, but I'll do one more since Jonathan's at the podium, and then I'll let other people jump in.
Please go ahead.
To the new resolution, and I'm only asking you because you're here, a funding question.
Yeah.
We could go back to Alderman McNamara and to Mr. Moriarty to talk about the actual initiative, but the funding source for the 7,500 is listed as the pilot money that came in. So the day we adopted the budget, we found out that additional pilot funds were there. And I just want to ask you, it's looking for 500,000 from the pilot money that came in. Are those funds still currently available, or has that pilot money been already absorbed by other expenses?
It would have been absorbed in order to balance the budget because there were two lines. The motor vehicle reimbursement was over budgeted at 5.8 million, and at the end, when the state passed their budget, they're only giving us 2.9 million, so there's a shortfall of 2.9, while the tiered pilot, we had a budget of 10.4 million, and the state in the end came with 13.3, and so we got 2.8 million more, but we were down 2.9. So in order to balance the budget, we need the full amount of the tiered PILO
Okay,
And we
so-
don't have this 500,000 from the PILO.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Chair, just so everybody could follow the flow of money, because on the night of the
Please
budget,
flow.
we had two monetary surprises. One was the 4 million and the ARPA funds that came in that we didn't allocate at the time of passing the budget, and the other was this additional pilot money. And the ARPA money has been allocated by CCND, right? That 4 million has been allocated, 2 million for the Board of Education and 2 million for vehicle
Capital equipment
purchases.
and capital
Yeah,
vehicles.
equipment. So that chunk of that money that we were looking at the night of the budget has already been allocated by CCND. So now, naturally, we assumed this pilot money would still be there, not understanding that through what you said, it was shifted to fill the budget gap for motor vehicle reimbursements from the state. So then it would end up being a question back to Alderman McNamara on, one, the value of the program, and then how it would be funded if this $500,000 doesn't exist. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman McNamara? Care to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. I just want a point of reference that all of that money, that ARPA and the allocation circumvented the council, never came before. The money was accepted, and the resolution called for the legislative body to allocate the funds, and the process circumvented the city council when the only legislative body in this government is the council. I just want to point that out to you. Thank you. And then when we did the budget transfers, Jonathan, we did 12 or 13 transfers to various funds and programs. And that also included a remaining balance of $3.898 million in the unfunded fund balance. And you indicated the mayor and the city could utilize that money for any purposes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Thank you.
Alderman Pabon?
Now, is there going to be a limit on this amount? That say a homeowner comes in and says his basement and everything else is going to cost him $75,000. What happens then?
I believe the claims are limited to $7,500 under this proposed resolution. Correct me if I'm wrong. Alderman McNamara?
Yeah, that's how it's worked. It's meant as tools and resources to give homeowners to prevent. I think the claims process involves property damage. Am I correct?
I'd have to defer to Mary on that. I don't see them.
Typically, the claims process, I'm sorry, is yes, for property damage.
And that's why, this is that Hartford application that started the program. That's why they started it, to do a preventive measure to prevent further damage in terms of having these tools available to homeowners so that they could purchase these items. And Mary covered the courtesy program, the rapid response, well, but that program does not preclude, to what we heard in public testimony, a homeowner from filing further claims against the city for larger amounts or beyond what the, what's the outfit PMS has? Apple Valley or?
Apple Valley Service Master.
Apple
excuse me.
Valley, that's a nice name, thanks. Apple Valley Service Master. And I know that, as you pointed out, Mary, the Stamford has done that program, and where you find that program available to Stamford residents is at the vendor or the contractor's website. And again, I just think this pilot program is something that works elsewhere. We should take a serious look at it, get the program review data, and move it and implement it. And as our finance director indicated, the funds are there to cover a $500,000 pilot program.
Alderman Santiago?
Mr. Chair, thank you. These two programs are totally different. One is claims, which is the one that we're talking about, that she's talking about. This is to deter from any other damages to occur. So the difference is, again, say for instance, you said sewer, we're also talking about overflow of water from the streets, for instance, on Alden and Allen and, where's the street that I live off of? Where the bowl, where they have Overlook, thank you. Where they have that driveway pitched down because of the way the streets are, and the water flows in and comes in down into their garages or somewhere to their basements. This program is meant for sub pumps, whereas in case it does happen again, you're able to pump this water out of the basement before it ends up getting worse than it did before, when the first time it happened. Also, French drains, which is another way of deterring the water from going into the properties if it's coming from depending on the hill. There's other tools. This is not meant to deter claims. This is meant to deter other claims from happening by fixing a temporary fix or fix until the city is able to fix the main problem, which is usually the size of the pipes and things like that. So that's why I sat there, this came up about 3 months ago when I sat outside and looked at the rain, and I looked at the new development of a park, which is beautiful. I'm not gonna say anything about that's wrong with it, but again, because of new development, new ways of it, water was flowing right down into our backyards, which never happened before. So this is where this came out. I said, John, hey, I think we should look into some programs where that they were, something for flooding in case, because again, we had Chase coming in, we had individuals coming in, and like I said, 23 new cases this year itself, just because of the way nature is happening, right? And we have our infrastructures are way behind from what is going on now. And that's the reason why some of the zonings that I have concerns about is because new developments like those may cause issues in other people's homes. I want to make sure that we're trying to figure ways to help the homeowners from having these issues again. You could nod your head and do all you want, but again, I work in construction. I know how it works. I work with water, so I know how that even works. So that being said, I seen it with my own eyes. The neighbor next door had his whole house full of water, and he never, and I've been living there for 15 years, never, ever, ever had a flood. But again, things happen, new developments and things, occurs, water flows, and it ends up in his basement. But that being said, I know the problem with that one was the sewer system. The sewer system was covered because it was never approved yet from the inspector side of it, and it snowed and froze, and that's how the water got in there. But again, nature, it happens, right? This program is just to help homeowners try to temporarily fix the problem until the city comes and fix the main problem, which is outside in the roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Santiago. Alderwoman?
Two questions. Is this a one-time for each resident that applies, or each time there is a rain issue? And then what happens if the demand for the grants exceeds the available funding? Is there a waiting list, or is there a second round of funding?
May I, Mr. Chairman?
Alderman McNamara, you want to respond?
As I understand it, in the original application is there, it may be limited to 1 year in Hartford. We can get that information, or it's a one-time to address an immediate problem. And again, we can bat around the amount on it, but again, this is a demonstration program to address an ongoing, decade-long issue that's going to be before us. And I think, again, it's based on the Hartford program, and I'm sure they incur some homes more than $7,500 in damage, which I know they have a claims process as well. But this is to prevent property damage before it gets more costly. And my neighbor, 2 doors down, the August 19th storms, her furnace doesn't work, and the heat has gone on, and the mold in that basement and other things, it's cumulative, and further damage can disrupt foundations, I understand, and other things. 2 doors up, it's not a problem in my house, I got lucky, but that's the kind of thing, a direct aid where the application is vetted, processed, eligibility terms are met, for at least, I would say, a bite at the apple once a year that does not preclude the claims process. And as Councilor Pecorski points out, with the courtesy service, the homeowner can refuse and go to their own people, but they can also come back and file additional claims if these occur. So there's a prevention element to this. It's a direct aid to homeowners to nip some property damage in the bud, and that's why I think it merits a demonstration program. We have an state legislator-elect who's proposed legislation for this kind of aid going to municipalities. Again, we showed that, well, Hartford has showed when the city stepped up with a investment, millions of dollars have followed through the federal process or the state process. I guess it helps to have the House Speaker in your town, but that's what happened in Hartford.
Thank you, Alderman McNamara. I would just point out that the MDC budget is $1.5 billion and the Mattabesett district's budget is $100 million. So, they are playing with far more resources than we have available. I believe it was Alderman Russell next, and then
I just would like
Alderman
to
Scott.
state that Alderman Santiago claims to be a professional that can make a decision what's best for the city. So I would like to ask the real professional, which is Mark, does this program overlap any other programs we have? And could it possibly cost more money to the city to have it in effect?
I mean, I'm just starting to understand what you're talking about here, because I mean, it's just like there's a devil in the details. No, it isn't overlap. You're trying to do something that's separate than the claims. You're trying to do something that they applied for a grant. I feel like the devil's way in the details. I don't know who would administer something like that. That's not, I mean, we really are public utility. We work at the right of way. Seems somewhat similar to our sidewalk cost share program, but I don't. Yeah,
Mark, could I?
Can I finish my
Sorry,
question?
sir, go ahead.
Can I also ask, has either one of these two approached you at all to discuss this program with you?
I've never talked about this program with anyone, really.
Thank you.
I'm
With
just
that
learning
being
about it
said,
right
I'll
now.
be a no vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Russell. I'm sorry, Alderwoman Scott was next in my brain list. Okay, Alderman Pavone.
Now, on the 75 preventive maintenance, now what are we gonna do? We're gonna go to each other's house and find out what they got, or how is that gonna work? So who's gonna?
If I may, and I'll pass it off to Alderman McNamara, this is based off an existing program in the city of Hartford. There were supposed to be subject matter experts here tonight who administer the program there. To our knowledge, and Alderman McNamara will clarify further, but this program's administered by, he can clarify further, but by a normal municipal employee who handles the applications, and it's a one-time preventative measure grant to do things like French drains, for instance, and it's separate from the claims process because that would be after the fact. This is a preventative measure before the fact. Thank you, Alderman McNamara.
Thanks. Well, yeah, that's how it started out. They've subsequently got more support. It started out in their housing department with no additional staff, which is, to Mark's point about explaining how the sidewalk program works, which is the sidewalks, which there is homeowner responsibility for sidewalks, but the city does have an aid program that Mark could, I think there's a analogy to how this would work if people meet the criteria. But Willie, my neighbor's got 200 gallons a half hour coming into Wouldn't a sump pump help that woman?
Yeah, but would she have to come in before it starts raining or whatever?
Yes.
Also,
Regular order, regular order. We'll keep the questions through the chair. Thanks. Alderman Pabon, do you have
So
any
would
further
that-
questions?
Okay, so would the neighbor have to come in and apply for it before the storms? So they can check it out, make sure her septic or pump works?
Alderman McNamara, care to respond?
All right, I want to give others a chance, but yes, particularly if it's happened dozens of times over the years, and they don't have the resources to pay for a sump pump.
I just want to give Corp Counsel an opportunity to chime in.
Thank you. Just a point of order. So we're saying preventative, but in the whereas eligible activities and improvements, it does have, because I just want to be clear, basement cleanouts, which would be typically a claims process after damage has occurred, new boilers, hot waters, electrical components, and related mold remediation, which would all be after a flood has occurred. So I just
Thank you very
wanted to
much.
point that out.
That's an excellent clarification. Thank you. Alderwoman Scott?
I have a couple things I wanted to say, but back to what we were just saying. Mary, wouldn't that be, if somebody, so let's say people are having flooding in their houses now, and they don't have a pump. So wouldn't it be, this could be a part of getting them a pump, so it
That would be,
prevent future.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That would be preventative, like a sump pump, but those things that I just read out, basement cleanouts that are in the resolution, that's a result of flooding that occurred and is part of our claims process and this other process that we have, as well as new boilers. We typically have individuals file claims for a new boiler or hot water heater because of the flooding. So those are as a result of flooding that has already occurred versus preventative measures. That's the only thing I wanted to point out.
Thank you.
So,
Alderwoman Scott?
I feel like this makes a lot of sense to me, because I do personally have flooding in my home, and there are neighbors who have flooding as well, because we live off of Allen Street. And it's very scary when it happens, and it's very mentally draining and physically draining when we have to like physically go down there and clean it up, or call Atlantic Restorations to come to the home and, throw all of your things away. And, I've had furnaces go, washers and dryers. It's thousands of dollars, over $10,000 claims every time. So I think if there is a way to prevent, like if we do know houses that are flooding and they need a pump, getting them a pump, or an extra pump, because in my situation, the pump will actually fail because there's so much water coming in. And then that's when 3 feet of water will be in my basement, which is like, you could go boating down there. So I think that this is a good idea to look at maybe situations that are working in other cities such as Hartford, and trying to base our plans off of trying to fix our situations based off of what is working for other people, and being about preventing. I mean, I'm huge on prevention on everything. I think, unfortunately, a lot of times we spend more time trying to put out fires versus trying to prevent them from occurring. And so I'm a huge fan of any kind of prevention that can happen. And I did want to just mention, like, in defense of Alderman Santiago, that he does work with water, and I think that, we should be respectful of each other here. And that's pretty much all I have to say right now. Thanks.
Alderman Scott, Alderman Santiago, 1 moment ago.
It's between you guys. Just through your corporate. So I would like to make amendment to this section whereas, through you guys, to where we will remove all the permit, because again, it is supposed to be permit. It's not supposed to be for the claim. So we do want to remove that, so that way the residents will be able to put a claim in, because if we do this, it will deter them from doing that part. So I would like to make a motion to amend section, 1, 2, 3,
The
4,
eighth
5,
whereas.
6, 7, 8. Thank you. 8 whereas, and remove gutters, drain snakes, video, camera inspections. Well, yeah, because that could go under the claims also too. 'Cause the claim, they have that same thing. Cross
Basement cleanup.
what I'm saying is, could even the claims could do those. They could go. They actually have those cameras. They go in there and do that just to make sure the laterals are functioning or whatever. So jets, basement cleanouts, new boilers, hot water heaters, electric components, and related molding remedies.
Thank you. We have,
Just the last.
the amendment as a second from Alderman Simpson, and did you have
Could
a
we just
question?
repeat that? I apologize.
Sure, yes, of course. Do you want to?
Here, from gutters, drain snakes. From gutters all the way down to the remedies of that section.
So,
So you, Mr. Chairman,
go ahead, Alderman McNamara.
through you, I'd like to ask, this is a friendly amendment, Alderman St.
It's
Andrew?
always a friendly amendment.
Friendly amendments. And to be clear, we're removing everything from the word gutters to the word basement cleanouts, to my knowledge, is that correct?
No, all the way to where it says remedy mode, related mode
Related mode,
remedies,
okay.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, and there was a second, Nate, do you want to restate the seconds, because we've clarified the,
But I think it would be useless to restate a second.
All right,
but
sorry.
I do have just a point of inquiry for Corporation Counsel. Can we run through the activities listed in this language that would be duplicative in comparison with the claims process? Just so we get all of this language out on the first shot?
that's what we're removing.
So you want me to run through them?
Yes, and please indicate if they're usually handled by the claims process.
So in my opinion, so sump pumps is typically like a preventative, but you could have someone that had a sump pump and it was damaged, but I understand that. French drains, I'm sorry, I don't know if Mark can help me with that. I don't even know what that is. A lateral replacement, I don't know that that's preventative, but again, I don't know what the situation, I don't know if the maker of the resolution would be able to explain that. But definitely, for me, basement cleanouts, like I said before, that's after damage has occurred. New boiler, that typically would be flooding has occurred and damaged your boiler and you need a new one. Hot water heater, again, after flooding has occurred, we've had individuals that claim their hot water heater was impacted and they needed a new one. Electrical components, again, sometimes is after there's already been flooding, and related mold remediation would be after flooding. Now, as far as the other ones, Alderman McNamara may be able to help on those, but like basement windows, maybe it's, because to me, if your flooding's coming from a basement window, the city's not necessarily responsible. It's only if it's, if it's coming through our main, or if there's issues with flooding in the street that, but if you have a basement window and, groundwater's getting in it, I don't know that that's the city's fault. Just my opinion.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Corporation Counsel, Alderman Santiago.
On the window cell, the reason why I could actually vouch for that one, on Rome Street, the sidewalk was paved, and it was paved in a certain angle that actually the water flowed all the way through. I have videos of that one, into the woman's window, and that's where she was able to flood through. And so again, in case it was a sidewalk which was repaved, and that never happened before, but again, then maybe the angle or something was whatever, and Mike Thompson would be the one, because he was actually councilman at that time, and it was, which I reported it to him, and he fixed it.
And you're saying there's something with the basement window?
Yes,
and
it went
that's
right
what-
through it went through the window.
Okay,
Right through the
I can
basement window.
understand that.
Because the water level was so high enough that it went through
I
the
get
window.
that. That could be as a preventative measure, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and sorry.
Alderwoman Belinda Vedra, she's gone.
I wasn't, if you don't mind. I have a roster of things that I've been waiting. Thank you. Mr. Perugini, through you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned that we have a claims line item. I'm just wondering if we ever exceed that, in actual expenditures in recent memory?
I don't know offhand, but I believe we would have. Because you budget only what you think it is and you don't want to go over the top, but when actual costs come in, they're usually higher than what's budgeted.
Gotcha, so. And, let's see, Mark, do you have a copy of the City of Hartford program here?
I have a copy of the resolution.
Okay, would you like a copy of the program that we're basing this whole thing off of? Just
Sure.
for help.
I have a copy of the resolution I printed out.
Oh, I think Corporation Council's got you. Alrighty. And just on the subject of French curtains, they are most definitely preventative. I don't know of any French drains. Thank you, not French curtains. I think they are a preventative measure. They're just, I believe Alderman Connors actually has one on the side of his house, if you can elaborate.
Point of order, I am extremely proud of myself for manually installing a French drain from the top of my lawn, which borders Gary and Cheryl Mala, who some of you might know are wonderful neighbors, but they had a little runoff that was totally flooding my vegetable garden, and I, using my lawyer skills, dug a trench and filled it with stones, and they have this special PVC pipe that has holes on one side, flows nicely down to the street. I was so proud of myself. Thank you for that moment.
I think I'm all set for now. Thank you.
I'll defer to,
Alderman Williams Saavedra.
So, Mr. Chair, just a point of order, are we still discussing the amendment, or should we vote on that and then?
I believe we are discussing the amendment
amendment,
in terms of the list of activities this will encompass. So I think this is all still pertinent to the discussion. I don't know if we have to vote yet.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to keep it to the amendment, because then I have some other things too. What I didn't ask, and seeing lateral replacement made me think of it, homeowners are offered the opportunity to participate in the safety valve program, that insurance program for water and sewer, and I'm just wondering if any of this also overlaps with that safety valve program, because I'm going to say, and I'll do more of it after the amendment vote, I'm not against this per se, I just want to make sure that everyone's treated fairly. Now, I myself pay for both the water and the sewer program. If someone chooses not to, and then they come to the city for something that could have been taken care of if they participated in the safety valve program, I might have a little bit of a problem with that. So I just want to understand how safety valve in that program might come into play with this.
Thank you, Alderwoman Williams Saavedra. Mark, could you possibly answer if any of these listed activities would conflict with the coverage provided by safety valve?
I mean, I think it's difficult to listen. The laterals for sure are contradictory to safety valve.
Okay.
I mean, everybody in this city has the opportunity to get lateral insurance. You could participate or not participate.
Okay.
If you participate, it covers you up to a certain amount, I think $6,000 for lateral replacement. So I think of that as not, as a separate activity entirely.
So, which would contradict with the coverage for the
Yeah.
All right, thank
Can
you.
I add a comment on the program? I've been thinking about this, because like, in some ways it is somewhat similar to the sidewalk program, but it's also a lot different, because the sidewalk program is, we have a sidewalk contractor. We can easily go out and look and determine what the cost we would pay if we had the sidewalk, our own sidewalk contractor do that work, and that's the maximum amount we'd reimburse for. In terms of permitting, I mean, we know the work, because it's gonna be done to a city standard, because we have standards for the sidewalk program. The contractor knows how much they can get reimbursed. They go out and solicit a contractor that may or may not be more or less expensive than us, and then we'll reimburse the amount that we've already told them that would be our maximum amount of reimbursement, because the amount of improvements here are on private properties. There could be building permits involved. Could be a lot of different, in one case, you might need a plumbing inspector. The next case, you're probably better with a structural person or a civil person. So it's a lot more complicated because it's on private property and there's so many different kind of constructions. I think you said mold remediation wouldn't be qualifying because it would be more of a claim. But it's such a more complex problem. And I think it has some merit, but this is not, because it's complex, it would be expensive, I think. You'd have to find some kind of a funding mechanism, which would be a fair amount of money beyond just $7,500, because the staff time, I think, would be very expensive too.
If I may, Director Moriarty, could you list a couple, even if, 2 or 3 things you would, consider to be purely preventative measures if you are able to pull such things out of the air?
Yeah. Backflow prevention is something that usually when there is a claim, that's something that we typically require if there was a...
Not even limited to this list too, if you know from elsewhere.
No. Yeah, some pumps are definitely some things. Sometimes it would be a regrading of property could potentially help.
Thank you.
I've been trying to think how this works, because we're also by establishing a stormwater utility, we're required to create an incentive program for people to lessen their impervious area or do things. I've been trying to just get my mind around, is this any way tied into that? I think it's a separate thing though, but
I believe this would be geographically limited too, whereas perhaps that, I don't know, I want to speak out of turn. Alderman McNamara?
I'm pleased you raised the sidewalk issue in terms of, administratively, that works. I don't know what your caseload is for that a year, but it's an issue frequently comes up on the streets or in the neighborhoods. But I think there's a strong analogy to that, and Councilor Pecorski, being the good lawyer she is, she's thinking of, is the city liable or not? This is a direct aid program where the city may or may not be at fault, but we're trying to help homeowners with a direct aid program, which has been done in the past under CDBG and other resources. And so if we have a fund to start a pilot program to see the benefits of it, I don't know what the list would emerge, but I think identifying just preventive items is a step in the right direction, not precluding the claims process. And it would complement the rapid response service that's going on that I'm now sharing with residents in terms of when the injury is occurring, you need to call the DPW at any time. That's my understanding, Mark.
Well, if there's a backup going on, we don't always get the call though, believe it or not, but we often do.
Yeah.
And, our person out there makes a determination, is this related to surcharging of our main, or is this likely a lateral issue? And in the case it's a surcharging of our main, we would go with the service master, we'd offer the service master. Now, that being said, the person may have an unpermitted basement and a bunch of things like that. So we're offering the service, but we've made, it's just a base determination that we could potentially be at fault here. We could find out things after that. A lot of the damage occurred because the person did work in their basement that they shouldn't have done because it was done without a permit. But we're still taking that leap of faith and potentially going in there and cleaning up.
Any further questions, Alderman McNamara? Alderman Barbosa's got one? Alderman Barbosa? We're on the amendment still.
Oh, we're still on the
Probably have to
amendment?
vote on it.
Yeah, I think there's enough things on a preventive basis list, but that should not preclude filing claims, as the rapid response program does not preclude any person from filing additional claims, because those large amounts that we've heard about and we've approved in the last 3 or 4 months, or over the last year, $130,000 or $40,000, it gets into sizable amounts. But these programs in Hartford, in Illinois, in New York, they're done to prevent things before they get worse. And so I'm amenable to any amendments that can make it a preventive program, and we can, as the amendments been made now, and refine it further. I think the key word here is flexibility. How can you respond to an individual homeowner's need to prevent something from happening?
Thank you, Alderman McNamara. Alderwoman Barboza? Oh, okay, so we are on the amendment still. All right. Alderwoman Valencia Vedra?
The amendment's important as it affects the overall resolution. So I know some of what Alderwoman Barboza is going to ask, and for me, it's an important ask before I even vote on the amendment, although it's not specific to the amendment. Because I do have some questions, like I would like to know what are other things that we would be able to list as a preventative measure. But to do that, I need Alderwoman Barboza to ask her question. So if you could give us a little leeway in our questioning here, because I really need her to ask her question.
That's actually the destination we're all trying to arrive at. So we've got Alderwoman Barboza. Why don't you go right ahead?
This program, I'm not against this program. I'm going to vote yes on this program. However, is there any way that we can push this off for about a month so that we can get the people who are actually supposed to be here to answer these questions for us the proper way and give us the information that we actually need? Because I think it's only fair to us to really ask the people who are actually going through this and how effective it is and how their city is managing it and how it's working for their people.
Would we entertain a motion to let's finish amending, okay. On the amendment, Alderman Gibson?
It was a follow-up to that.
Not on the amendment. Boy, this is two Hartford-dependent issues going on in the city tonight. Isn't that fun?
Mr. Chairman.
Alderwoman Beloin Saavedra.
I'm only going to vote on the amendment so we could dispense with the amendment and get to the basis of the resolution, which hopefully then will be tabled or postponed for action until our next meeting. But I think that passing this amendment, we may come back and amend it again as the issues unfold as to what is categorized as preventative. So I will vote in favor of the amendment, knowing that it will probably be revised again when we really tease out what is preventative.
It's an iterative process, and it's a worthy goal. So in that respect, I would, if there's no other discussion on the amendment, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Okay, we have the amendment passes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Alderwoman Valencia Saavedra.
Just for Alderman McNamara, since your resolution specifically states pilot funding, you're actually not going to use pilot funding, you're going to use unassigned fund balance, so you'll want to change that. So moving forward, people understand the pot of money that you're looking at to fund this, that's all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thanks.
Thanks. No, that you beat us to our homework. I had that on my list too.
Yeah, I was going to say.
All right. All right. Well, just as a personal, I thought that was a really great discussion. Alderman Simpson.
Alderwoman Barbosa had a couple questions earlier that I don't think fully got answered, so I just want to take a second to answer them before. Alderwoman, correct me if I'm wrong, you had a question on eligibility and then how there's eligibility and something related to the overall funding of this program. As it's written, this program would take $500,000 as a one-time fund. And throughout the process of this would-be program, people can apply for essentially grants up to $7,500. So the city would then be able to process the full $7,500, assuming this is what the grants are, up to 66 and a partial grant there. So we would be able to have 66 $7,500 applications approved, and then that's it for the program, because this is not funded through city funds. It would be a one-time allocation. And in terms of people being able to reapply for this, there are no guardrails that prevent it. Now, I don't think that's necessarily a good or bad idea at this point, because I've read reports by FEMA where the vast majority of flooding claims are made by like 15% of policyholders. So it would make sense that if we have this program, we can expect to see repeated issues among the same claimants, which I think is kind of what we see in the claims process already. We've had a couple people who have filed claims for previous storms, and then during that claims process, their house floods again, which means they put in for future claims. So I think having this program there is overall a helpful idea. I'm excited to see what we can add as preventative. But I will reiterate, even if we do qualify something as preventative, if that gets damaged in a storm and then there's a future claim on it, it would then be a restoration from damaged property, not additional preventative care. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Simpson. Insofar as the nature of time makes sense. Yes, Alderwoman Boylan-Saavedra.
I think it's in the body of the resolution, but in the final, therefore be it resolved, once we change the funding source, I also would say within available appropriations, because we will run out of money. This is a one-time expenditure, which means probably a homeowner will not get two bites at the apple, because this is a time-specific program. And in the fairness, you want to get as many different homeowners benefiting from the program than a homeowner coming 2 or 3 times for an issue. But I think we need to make sure people understand that, Alderman McNamara, you used the word pilot or demonstration program. I think if this passes and goes through, that it's very clearly a pilot program that we are trying out to see how effective it is. And again, when the amendment is made about using unassigned fund balance, I would also include within available appropriations, just so people understand that. Believe me, the state has that on all of their programs too.
Thank you, Alderwoman Boylan-Saavedra. Alderman Gibson.
Yes, I just have one question. I don't know if it was stated, but what department will be in charge of processing the claims and applications and improving them?
Alderman McNamara, care to field that?
Well, I'm not a professional at this, but I'll have a stab at it. I hesitated to define that in actually raising this with the mayor's office over the summer and talking about a number of things. I felt that was in the purview of the executive branch of government. I would assume, since Mark raised the sidewalk issue, although he's a streets guy and roads guy primarily, there is the water, under your area is the water. And since the rapid response program, you are directly linked to the water department. I would imagine it would reside there in terms of handling applications.
Thank you, Alderman McNamara. Alderman Gibson? Alderwoman, I didn't see who was
I'm
first.
sorry, and I'll make it really quick. That's a very important question to answer, and I think if ultimately this item will be postponed for a month so that we could get questions, I think it would be good for the council to put a series of questions together in preparation for the next meeting that we need answered to be able to make a reasonable vote on that. And I would highly suggest that the leadership of the majority party reach out and have a conversation with the mayor, since the staffing, you're saying you're leaving it up to the executive branch, just so that communication is happening, that this is on the table, blah, 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 and what her opinion might be on the best department in the city to manage the program.
Well-
Thank
I'm just making a recommendation. Take it for
Just-
what it is, in the spirit of bipartisanship. I just,
Well, receive-
an open communication, I would just make that recommendation.
Alderman McNamara briefly.
Just briefly, actually, those discussions, we were, in the mayor's words, negotiating. And that discussion was abruptly cut off when the statement was made, there's no staff for this, can't do it. But I'm hoping to change minds, and I think it's a win-win for the administration as well as the council to add another step to deal with this long-term issue we're going to be having, to help residents directly.
Well, it will be beneficial to have someone from the city of Hartford here as well. Alderman Simpson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I do encourage those conversations to keep happening. I don't want to see them stopped. I want to see us participating in good faith. But I do want to raise that we are kind of basing this program based on what the city of Hartford has going on. And I just happen to have experience working in Hartford City Hall for, I don't know, first part of COVID. The city of Hartford has a dedicated grants and administration department, and I'm not sure that the city of New Britain does have that. So I think having this program be administered by the departments that are most relevant would be the next best step, but unfortunately we can't rely on our friends in Hartford to really answer this question for us. So I just want to make that known to us and just help us flesh it out.
Thank you,
Ju-
Alderman
ju-
Simpson.
Just a point of
Alderman McNamara?
info, and then I'll get out of the way. I've talked to Mr. Frank Della Ripa, City of Hartford Engineering, who's, and who referred me to the managers of the program from its inception, because we want to take a look at what happened at the inception before they obtained external funding. And to Alderman Simpson's point, I believe Jack Benjamin and they actively pursue federal earmark money and other things as well, but I think we'll get the answers. I endeavored to have somebody from Hartford here tonight, probably not the best of nights, in light of a lot of people in government not having much sleep last night. And also just to get the program review information of what the outcomes were they discovered.
Thank you, Alderman Simpson.
Just one more thing to share to put us on the track to actually answering that question. The City of Hartford program here is administered through the Department of Developmental Services in their housing division. So, you know, counter to what I just said, maybe they do have answers, because this program, although it's essentially a grant-based program, it is administered through the Division of Housing there. So maybe we do have people to turn to on this.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank
no
you.
need to reinvent the wheel. All right.
Are we done?
Are we
I'm
going
ready
to
to
entertain
table.
any motions
I
for
got it. Just waiting for.
Alderman Santiago?
Thank you. Due to good conversations that we do have, but we still have more to work on. And again, this is not perfect, and this is something that we do want to push out with all the wheels and all the whistles being done properly. I'll make a motion to table to the next AFO meeting.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Items tabled, and thanks again, everyone, for a great discussion. Don't know if I have to gavel that. All right, on to the next item on the agenda.
Chair?
Alderman Santiago?
I make a motion to accept and refer to the full council with a favorable recommendation, item number 36623.
Thank you, and seconded by Alderwoman Boulain Saavedra. Do we
leave it
have
to the
any
floor.
discussion on this item? Oh, lovely. Do we have any discussion?
I just,
Alderman
I read,
McNamara?
I read the previous, this is a CROG natural risk study, and it identifies the number one problem with the city is flooding. It mentions Allen Street, it mentions Overlook. In the past report, it understates the Allen Street problem, and in the current report, I think it understates it in terms of the number of properties and homes affected. But it makes the point that more efforts are needed in this area to protect property, public health, and other issues. And it's good that we get that from CROG in terms of accepting it. I found it very useful in terms of our prior discussion.
Thank you, Alderman McNamara. Alderman Valencia-Vedra, and then
I did take the opportunity to read it, so although it's not here tonight in paper form, we did get it electronically, and it was stimulating reading. What it also does, Alderman McNamara, I think, is put us in a position to get money from outside of the city. So an important piece of adopting this plan tonight and moving it along to the council is to open the city up to get grants, whether from the state or from the federal government, to help us out in some of these areas, and especially Allen Street, which we are all very concerned about Allen Street, and we continually talk about it. Director Moriarty has a meeting set up for Allen Street residents somewhere in the next 2 weeks, and we are actively pursuing state funding for a bonding project for Allen Street. So yes, I think we are all very well aware of the needs of Allen Street and trying to do everything we can to finally, fix that. But I urge adoption of this, and I think it'll help bring money to us for the problems we're all identifying.
thank you, Alderwoman
I just-
Valencia-Vedra. Alderman McNamara?
I'd concur, and 1 year ago, counselors and others were told, nothing can be done, the legislators need to come up with the money, but we made good progress this year because of public participation and people finally coming together, and I think we're taking another step tonight in terms of what's been proposed.
Oh my God, I agree with you.
No. Let's send now then. All right, well, any further discussion, or is that the note? I think that's a good note. All right. All in favor of the favorable referral?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay? Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Alderman Santiago, seconded by Alderman Simpson. Thank you, everyone, so much. Great discussion.